welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting. Another episode of the Indie Show. Tonight I am talking Local Man by Tim Seeley and Tony Flex. And I got a couple guys that never join me for anything. Well, the first guy never joins me for anything. Like, hey, what's up, John? How are you?
I got shenanigans.
Second time doing a stream together?
Yeah, I think it's just a couple this week. Yeah, this week.
Yeah, second time this week. That's right. So, what's up, John? How are you?
I'm very excited to talk about this. I have yet to do any shows talking about this series, and it's routinely been one that, while it was running, made my favorites of the year. So I'm very excited.
Nice. I am looking forward to this because you are the reason that I picked this up. You pushed this on me very hard, repeatedly and often. So looking forward to discussing this with you. But we got another guest with us, someone that never talks books with you or movies or anything. This might be your guys' first time this week on a stream together. Greg, what is going on? The Bearded Comic Bro.
What's up, man? I feel like I'm Greg, John, and JP, right?
Yeah.
Right? Okay, cool. So you just randomly found me on YouTube and were like, hey, you want to do a show with us? I was like,
you're like, Local Man, do it. You're joining us.
I also like how you guys have the hardcover and I'm just rocking the trades, but
that's because
I had the trades. Yeah. I upgraded to this when I saw that it was going to be all nicely in one bound set, and then I gave the trades away. So
well, I'm going to eventually get the hardcover and I'll still keep the trades because that's what I am. I'm a hoarder on my shelf.
That's my guy.
You're a hoarder like most of us, Greg.
Yeah. Now, if I have 2 copies of the trades, I'll give one of the trades away. But
yes. Well, we have my man GTK in here tailgating early, and Gordon is here now. What is going on, Gordon? Glad you're joining us. Hopefully, a few more folks will join us. But yes, we are talking Local Man by Tim Seeley and Tony Flex. Curious how you found this, John. You're the first person I remember talking about this book. That doesn't mean but you're the first one I remember, like, on your streams talking about, like, hey, I enjoyed this. Maybe it was just one of your streams with Alec. I don't remember, but like you were first person I remember even saying that this existed came from you. So how did you find Local Man?
I might have found it through people like Greg and Pop Culture Philosophers and their shows. Just I try to stay connected to people who read a ton of indies and give good reviews on these things, so I know what's what and what's out there. And I was not a big Tony Flex, or I don't know how to pronounce his name, Fleece.
Is it Fleece?
It's Fleece.
I didn't love.
I wasn't going to be that guy, but it is.
Yeah. Okay.
I didn't love.
No, correct.
I'm one of the few people that didn't love Stray Dogs and didn't love Feral. Like I like them fine, but I'm not the rabid pun fan base for those books. This is by far the superior book for me. And so I have waited a while, and I won't hold it against the book that the review at the top is by Scott Snyder. I won't hold that against the book either.
Well, they got Jeff Johns in the back.
That's where I looked. Yeah. But instead, it took me a little while to come around to the idea, because I was like, oh, it's another, The Boys or whatever kind of a book. And instead, like, it just vibed with me right off the bat. And I think I read the trade, that volume 1 first, and then I was locked and loaded for the rest of it.
Okay. What about you, Greg? He's crediting you. How did you find Local Man?
I could be wrong, but my guess is I had Tony on the show early on when Stray Dogs, really before Stray Dogs like blew up. It was kind of right in the midst of that. And I want to say on that show, he had hinted at, he had Local Man coming out soon, and he had Uncanny Valley coming out soon. And I don't think Feral was out at the time when he was talking about that. And I really did like Stray Dogs. And so being a fan of Tony Fleece, I was like, well, this sounds great. Like 90s nostalgia, like holy buckets. And then teaming up with Tim Seeley and with them both doing the writing art, I was like, yes, let's do this. And I'm glad it did not disappoint for me.
So let's talk a little bit before we get into the details of the story about the structure of this, like the way they tell this story. And you both mentioned the fact that it's like there's some 90s throwback here, and it's very much we get a portion of every issue is now, which is the majority of every issue is now. Like, and we have this basically, don't know if it's disgraced is quite the right word, but like former hero who is returning to his hometown. He's no longer allowed to be a hero for reasons we never quite fully understand, at least in here. They never quite give all the reasons of exactly what happens. And so that's the majority of every book is what's happening to him current day as he's went back to his hometown. And then at the end of every issue, we get flashbacks to his time as a hero. And all those flashbacks are very 90s coded, Image Comics, pouches, and, you know, skippy outfits and big boobs and big guns and, you know, all the stuff we love about 90s Image kind of comics. So what did you, I'll let Greg go first. What did you think about the structure, how they tell this story, and like they're bouncing back and forth, and we get Cross Jack and Jack as he returns home. Like, what did you think of this?
So what's funny is go with the structure. When I first got the issue, I told you, like, I was ready for it. I was coming, and issue 1 had come out, and I couldn't find it on the shops. All I could find was the B cover. And what I didn't realize was, I was like, man, well, all they have is the B cover of the book. But how they did it was that's just the back cover of the A cover book on traditional. So if you were I know you guys read it in the trade, at least JP, but if you were reading it, once you finished it, then you had the story, then you had to flip over the book like the old school gimmicky days.
Oh, I did not know they did that.
Yeah, it was flip-flopped. Okay. And the other part of the structure is Tim and Tony wrote the story, and then Tony did the art on the new part stuff, and Tim did the art on the 90s stuff. And so, like, to see like that kind of right there, what was funny too is I kind of fell out of comics during the 90s. So like what was funny is, or I wasn't in the big Image boom and stuff when it came out, right? I was still DC Batman, stuff like that. I kind of started to go back and read some of those stuff as it was coming out, of like along with this. And at one point I was like, well, that's a silly character that definitely would have been in like the 90s. Like that's like, that fits the motif. And then I'm like, oh snap, that was actually a real character. They weren't actually parodying it. Like it was an actually legit 90s character.
Yeah.
So I had to do some double takes as I was reading that too. So
I'll be honest, I don't know. Like I didn't go back and check like how many of these are real 90s characters and how many of these are created for this book. So most of the ones, and John probably can speak to it, most of the ones that were in the 90s, like the main team, but they reference a lot, and it was the stuff that was really in the gold issue, as well as I want to say there was another issue where they had it, but like the team up that he does with the
Bad Girls one,
the Bad Girls might have been it. The team up that he did with Gold, where Cross Jack teamed up with a bunch of different characters we hadn't met yet, are all pulled from different Image. And then, and at least in the trade, they're listed at the back of the copyright of who created those characters. So I would say for the most part, like, I mean, Shadowhawk shows up and, you know, and like, and those types, I would say like John, it would probably like 30% or 25% of those are like, most of them are made for it, and they just reference the other ones that aren't actually in the book throughout it.
Okay. Right. All right, John, what about you? What did you think of the structure of this? How they put this together to bring them the 90s nostalgia, but like as they're telling the story, and how they use it?
Yeah, I mean, I legitimately, like, my worry was when I first started checking this out, I was watching The Boys TV series, and I was like, and that was my ultimate turnoff. I was like, I don't want more of this depressing meta look at superhero comics. I don't really want this. Is just going to be more dark, depressing stuff. I didn't realize what I should have right away is that this isn't Ennis, right? Ennis wants to make it depressing, and there's no hope, and this is just going to go bad, and it's corporations are the worst, and I get, and I don't disagree. I'm just saying, like, I got that, right? Yeah. This has far more optimism, far more charm, and far more humor, and I think the way they balance it is by having a laugh at those 90s books, right? Having those final pages be so tongue-in-cheek, right? And be such a roll in the hay, man. It's fun. And that's the thing that kept that format and that structure and that concept kept bringing me to this like simple idea that this is just a really fun experience.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think I agree with everything you guys say. I think there's just the right amount, like I said, the balance of current versus past is just the right amount. All the past stuff is related, but not like necessary to the story, like to truly understand. It's like it's there. It gives you information about what's going on now, or it gives you information about Jack or some of the other characters, but none of it is like, oh, like changes the story necessarily of what's happening right now. So, but yeah, I think it really works. I love that they switched the art. There's one panel we'll talk about like later in the book where he like shows up somewhere and they put the 90s art even though he's still in the local man thing for just like one panel. And it's, and it's so well done. So let's talk about our protagonist here, Jack. Our local man, as he has to go by because he can't use his hero. He's not technically allowed to do any heroics.
No.
He's not allowed to use his hero name anymore because it's owned by the super team that he was a part of. And he's went home and everyone hates him. So what did you think of Jack, John? What were your thoughts about Jack?
Hey, I'm on your channel. Fuck Crossjack. Like fuck. I absolutely love the character. I think he is such a wonderful like screw up. And we don't know how he became the disgraced version that we see coming back home with his tail between his legs, but we do see him consistently be a problem for others. Like he as somebody who can always hit the target, which is his power, right? He can always find his way. He is completely lost when we first meet him. And I think that's the fundamental paradox and interest point, I think, for me, for the character. And what we see is the more often that he ignores what he needs to do, the harder his path will become. And he's an unwillingness to acknowledge his own foibles and his own needs and the things that he has to do is what he's his own problem. He just gets in his own way. And the second he just lets go and allows himself to be the guiding force he's supposed to be, that's when he finds the target and he hits it every time.
Yeah. What about you, Greg? What do you think of Jack here, of Cross Jack, as the local man as he becomes? Because that's his superhero name comes from local man saves preacher.
Right. I struggle sometimes with these characters, and JP, this on, we've done enough shows of where I'm like, you're making your own, like the problems are your own fault. Like stop doing what you're doing. And it's so frustrating. I think like for me, there's a little bit more heart and genuineness to the character, even in the midst of like, he still does what he understands that like him fooling around with people is what gets him into these situations. And he's like, doesn't learn from his mistakes, but it's not, I don't know if it's just because of the humor in the book for me, but it's not done in this like malicious way as much as like, I feel like with sometimes with other characters where like, I'm like, I hate those characters because of that. And I don't know if it's because of the humor throughout the book of like the F Cross Jack and stuff like that throughout the thing. But there's a little bit of levity to the character where like, because maybe the book's not taking itself as serious as some of these other books, that allows me to give grace to the character that I sometimes would not give as much grace to the protagonist. Of like you're setting up your own issues and faults. But even besides that, like, for the most part, like he seems to be trying to do what's right, whether he can figure it out or not too. And so I think that plays into it a little bit for me, but I really like the design of, like he can't use his name. He can't dress up and he can't use anything that is shield-like because that also is something he has. And so he just wears a ski mask like that. Like the point that's supposed to be like, it's okay, they won't know it's me because I'm wearing a ski mask. And I think they even like touch on it at one point. They're like, you're wearing the same jacket you have on all the time without the ski. Like, and so it's like that tongue-in-cheek like stuff allows me to say like, it's not taking itself seriously. And I think it's also being meta looking back at like the comics of saying like, back at the 90s comics is sometimes we hold it a little bit too serious when we're having these debates of superheroes and things. And it's just like, it should just be fun sometimes, gang. And I think that's what this is.
So yeah, I agree with all that. I think it works better because he is to a certain degree self-aware that he's a fuck up, and he just doesn't fix it. Like, you know, he just doesn't like. He knows that. Like, he's at one point he starts messing around with his ex, who's married and has kids, and he's like
married to the sheriff,
and who's married to the sheriff, who's helping him on stuff, and he knows he's like, really probably should be doing this, but I'm getting pleasure out of it, so I'm doing it. You know, and it's just like the whole thing with being a hero. Like, he doesn't know how to do anything else, even though he knows that it's just going to keep getting him in trouble because he's not supposed to be doing this anymore. And even though, like, half the time that he tries to help people, he ends up making it worse as he goes through there, because he doesn't, like, for somebody that can hit the target, he misses a lot as we go through the story. And it's, so I think it's very well done. I think the humor definitely helps. He was a big time hero, but he doesn't take the fact that he was a hero very seriously about himself. And I think that helps also cushion the blow. Like, yeah, I'm supposed to help people, but he doesn't take himself super seriously, because he knows what he is, even if he can't fix it.
Yeah, he's not coming off of like arrogant of like, oh, I'm Crossjack. Like, you should, like, you know who I am. Like, come on, like, I'm a celebrity. Yeah. Like, and so I think that gives me a little bit more grace with this character.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's always basically almost apologizing for being a superhero. I'm sorry, I screwed up. Like, I'm sorry about this. I'm sorry about that.
So I want to talk a little bit about the town, because we talk about, like, everyone when he comes back home, and basically he's met with a wave of fuck Crossjack. Like, it's basically what everyone says to him. Like, no one is glad to see him. No one likes him, and I think early in the book, I assumed that was because of whatever fuck up he did that got him canned. But as we come to see in the course of the book, it's not that. The reason everyone in town hates him is because he left to go be a superhero, and he never looked back, which a lot of people do in their lives. Like, they grow up somewhere and they leave and they go do their life. So I'm curious what either of you thought about, like, just how, like, yes, if you're talking about his individual actions, yes, he's a fuck up and he deserves something. But the whole thing of, because he left this town, now these people all hate him. What did you think about that? And, like, how fair that was to him actually as a character and a person? I don't remember who's first. I think Greg, go ahead.
I think it's twofold. I think it's a little bit for me of, like, they hate him because he left. And, like, before, as it goes on in the story, we're seeing that, like, the town was starting to get, like, this facility and stuff because they were going to be, like, the next, like, hub for, like, growing superheroes. And then when he did leave, it kind of is like when the big, you know, growing up in Ohio and you have all these abandoned, you know, automobile factories or power plants that, like, once this is gone, like, the town, you know, starts to crumble in and of itself. And so I think twofold. I think they're mad that he left. And then I think they're also pissed off at him that he had to come back because he failed, right? Like, he wasn't the success that, like, that at least, like, you can be proud of as your town of, like, he made it, like, and so, like, because he left, you feel the abandonment. And then when he didn't make it, he has to come back, and you're just like, it's almost a 2-punch double whammy. And I think for him, of, you know, growing up in small town, like, there's a lot of people that, like, I'm still, like, 45 minutes from a small town I grew up in, but there still is, like, it still is a small town. And it's one of those, like, I would get judged all the time. Like, you wouldn't want to come back. You don't want to raise your kids here. I'm like, no. Like, and so there is this mentality of, like, a small town in the Midwest. I think this is what Wisconsin, like, that you can tell Tim or Tony grew up in one of those small towns, because, like, you feel that in the moment of, like, there is this kind of, like, you're abandoning us because, like, you think you're better than us now because you're going out to here. So, like, there's that animosity. And then when you don't make it and you have to come back to, like, oh, now we're good enough for you because you couldn't make it. Like, I think there's a little bit of that too. So I thought that, like, the town in and of itself was just it's a character. Like, you know, we talk about towns being characters a lot, but, like, the identity of the people of that town is really a character in this book too.
Yeah. And it's someone, like, who also grew up in, like, town like that. My folks still live there. I live like 2 hours away. I live in a different small town in the same like rural area kind of thing. But yeah, you get that. It's like, oh, like big man comes back to visit. And it's like, dude, I don't like, I get that from those people. And it's like, well, I just went to college and got a job. It's not like so I totally get that, and I totally get everything you're talking about. John, what about you? What did you feel about these like dynamics? You're a city boy. You're not like necessarily rural, like
just
but
a little down boy.
City boy. All right.
You're big California.
I'm you big city YouTuber.
Yeah, YouTube star. What did you think about the town dynamic?
Well, I like that the town feels like, number one, you were one of us, and you're turning your back on us. And then two, you're representing us and you're doing it poorly. Like there's those two sides to their frustration, I think. And when those things coalesce, it's in his failure. His failure becomes their failure, right? And so he comes back in disgrace. That reflects on them, right? At least if he had gone off and been the leader of Gen 4 or whatever, like they could have been proud of their local hero, but he abandoned them, turned his back on them, and then disappointed them. And that's a rough combination, I think, for them. And he knows it. There's no mystery in his mind. He doesn't deny it. He doesn't rationalize it. He knows that, and he has at a loss as to how to fix it until he realizes what has to be fixed is truth's got to come out, right? I've got to go and face these uncomfortable truths about my creation and this town's creation and my friends, the people I thought I knew and loved, and the impact those things have had on my community. And once he does that, things start to snowball towards a resolution for him.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm still like, most of my topics were not necessarily like issue, like specific story things. Sure. It was a lot about character. So for things in the story you guys want to bring up, feel free to do
I would love to hear your thoughts on. I think the character that I think is most interesting, curious is Inga, and I was very curious.
Inga was actually next on my list.
Yeah, because obviously Inga's the girl that he had a crush on when he was there originally. They were like partners. She was the girl in the chair for him in some ways when he was getting started. He leaves, and she is forced with some really bad choices. And ultimately, she sides with the corporation and starts like taking advantage of this town and its connection to superheroes, and starts getting into some very shady things. So she goes maybe a little more like secretively, but goes down a similar path to Jack. And I'm just curious what you thought of her character, because all the big reveals fall on that side, right?
So yeah, Greg, why don't you go first, and then I'll get my thought. What did you think of Inga and her arc here? Because she's the girl that got left behind, and and how she reacts to that, and how she sort of gets used by this corporation that takes him. Like the hero that's leading that comes back and it's using her, but then she's making choices to save the town. What do you think of Inga's arc here?
Well, and I think this is the one part where we mentioned that that you can kind of not have to read those 90s parts of the issues where it's her 90s issue, I think, is in volume 2 in the trade.
Yeah, there's
it's a crucial. Yeah. It's a crucial piece because you really see she gets left and by Crossjack when he goes, and she's trying to make a difference in the said town, right? She's like, oh, I'm gonna run for mayor, and they're like, we don't do that here. It's my month, and the next month it's a cow's month, and then she's like, well, I'm gonna start this organization at the what was supposed to be the superhero headquarters. It's now a community center / police station, and they're like, nobody shows up. And so she's trying to do things the right way. And I think it's showing you the paradox of two different people, right? Crossjack, who's been burned time and time again, and he still is looking for hope in humanity. He's still trying to do the right thing. Where Inga, I think, gets burned so many times by her hometown. She just says, screw you guys. You guys, I'm trying to make this place better. You don't want to do it. So I'm going to look out for number one now. My boyfriend left me, he was my world. And now I'm going to come back to boom, and you guys don't care about it. I'm gonna just look out for me now. And so I think it's a very good, without being like too on the nose of it, like of looking at two characters who are going through stuff, and that you have to be like, okay, like one can get beat down and still go down this path, and one can get beat down and go this path. And I think like there's a lot of, like I'm reading this series and I'm like, and I even like rereading it, these last 2 days, I'm like, I forgot like how horrible of a person she is throughout like points of like, oh, like they really, they tease that like, she kind of is like super villain-esque, but like then realize like towards the end, you're like, you really are like, and I think it just shows you of like her character though, like, you still kind of like are looking out for like, man, I need a, like, I hope she's like, is she good? Like, I don't know. And then you're like, no, I don't like this. So I thought
I'm trying to get to like,
I thought the pacing of how they kind of revealed her motives and, who she is was really well timed too.
Yeah, because it's over about 4 issues of the backstory, 4 or 5 issues.
Yeah.
It goes from Inga is the good guy to Inga is the bad guy. And you see her kind of downfall as she goes through. And the funny thing is her downfall comes from getting hooked up with the same hero that's leading the team that Crossjack is on, and which is the Camo Crusader. And we'll get to him in a little bit in a minute. But yeah, so anything else you want to add on Inga there, John? Or
no, John.
You didn't say anything about her yet. I asked you the question.
Oh well, I don't know. No, I think Inga is an excellent use because we see her. She has gotten so jaded to everything that's going on that she doesn't like. It started from this place where she's going to say, well, if Crossjack is gone, well, I'm going to save this town. She gets abandoned by him. And like Greg says, all of her initial efforts fail. And she gets hooked up with the superhero corporation, basically, sort of thing, behind the scenes. And it's basically they're like the other heroes that Crossjack were training for just disappear. And it's because they use them to try to steal their powers because they decide they weren't good enough. And yeah, she goes down this very dark road. And we see even like initially, like we talked about that, like Jack comes back and he can't help himself. He hooks up with his ex-girlfriend, even though she's married and got shit. But we see that really part of that is her using him. Like she knows he has no willpower. So she's using it to manipulate him in the situations that she wants now that he's back, trying to keep him out of her way. And trying to like control what he's doing, even though that's really a waste of time because Jack doesn't know what he's doing half the time. So he's just going to do shit. Like it doesn't matter.
Well, and I think a couple of times she makes a promise to the corporation that she can handle Jack. Yeah. Like she can control him or keep him at bay. When she knows damn well and good that there's no leash that would hold this man. Like he is absolutely untethered.
Yeah. And so, no, I think she's an excellent antagonist in the course of this but you can also see why she goes down the path she does. Like it doesn't, not to justify it, but you can see like her villain arc, how it comes, like the way they play it out in the back issues. And Greg is right. Like I think in the first volume, the end of the 90s stories are not nearly as critical. That second volume, they're very critical when they're telling Inga's story in terms of the overall arc. Let's talk a little bit about his superhero. Well, let's talk a little bit about these superheroes that he got hooked up with that have now ditched him, and that we see is actually behind a lot of the dark stuff going on in this town. The Camo Crusader and his wife.
Yeah.
Is it Neon? Is that
Neon?
Yeah. Neon. What do we think about these? Those are really the only two heroes on his team that we get a lot on during the course of this book. What did you think of Camo Crusader and or Neon as we go through this, and their relationship and Jack's role in the relationship as we discover as it goes through here? Greg, what did you think of these two?
I mean, I love it. Like, because you can obviously Tony and Tim have a love for comic books and 90s, right? And they know the tropes, they know the characters, and they have fun with it. And we say like you could skip the first backstories in the first volume, but like I think you miss out on a lot if you do, because you get to see Camo Crusader and Neon and kind of that relationship with Jack. And the tropes that were thrown into comics, I think, really play into the story making of these things that you still see in modern comics. And like for me, of the, like you have like the very much like it's hilarious because you have the hippie, like love everything. Neon is kind of her motif, and then you have the very super right wing Christian conservative, like my guns and everything kind of guy, and they're like, but they fell in love, and like those just like those characterizations of those people, I think are funny and like very telling for like the help move the story along. But then I do feel like they do such a good job in those backstories of showing like how to a degree that like Camo Crusader really was like a father figure for Crossjack, and trying to like, he never lived up to his own father's expectations, and so like then he's like, well, I can do this, but then still realizing that he still makes those dumb decisions throughout it. I love like they weren't like copies of like Superman per se or Batman characters. Like they were unique characters of like, and like it's the 90s justification for like, oh, all the superheroes are scantily clad, and her character's like, well, I absorb, my power is like I absorb light, and the more skin I expose, the stronger my power is. So like that was their justification for it. And like if you're reading that, you go, oh, okay, that, because like half the time you're reading these comics, you're like, why don't they put on armor? Why don't they put on more like? And they're like,
right,
and like, oh, you're just trying to sell comic books with skin and boobs and butts. And they're like, no, like her character needs to do this so she can be as strong as possible. I was like, that's such a 90s move, but it's such a good way to utilize that trope. And like
a wonderful rationalization, right?
Right.
Yes.
And so like I really enjoyed those characters. And like if you told me like we're gonna spend more time in like a 3-issue mini of Neon and Camo Crusader, I'm like, I'd read it. Like I'm here for it. So like I just thought it was really well done for those characters to set the stage for the story.
What about you, John? What did you think of Camo Crusader and Neon and their relationship with Jack here as we go through this?
It's complicated. There's so many layers to it.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously the fertility layer being one of the ones that gets kind of thrown in a little later, but I think also as it goes farther along, and after Jack turns him into a pincushion and we lose Captain Crusader, or sorry, Camo Crusader.
Camo.
Yeah. The relationship that grows with he and Neon going after her, where he's like living with her for a little bit. And then it's like, there's some interesting layers here. And I think I feel like in my mind, I struggle to separate, or I maybe I unfairly compare this to The Boys a lot, because their meta looks at superheroes, and there's a big evil corporation behind like injecting citizens and turning them into superheroes, and people caught in the middle with like, oh, they're selling your image and how you look to the public, and there's a lot of like concept similarities, but the execution is so vastly different, right? The goal here, it seems, for me at least, to really humanize these characters, versus there's a lot of demonizing maybe going on with The Boys. And I think that's partly why I gravitate more to this book as being a better read for me. And I, even the Camo Crusader, who you routinely hate, and you're like, this guy is nuts. There's other times where you're like, you sympathize with him and you feel bad for him. And same with Neon. The Bad Girls, I think it is, issue where you see what their team was like in a realm without men, and the journey that her character goes on. And then when the men come back, and she's devastated, almost like she's very upset that her husband is back, which is a very interesting layer that we didn't get prior to that, right?
Yeah.
And so the things like that, and the fact that she takes Jack in when she has no reason to have to, and protects him, despite the fact that he is clearly a drain on her life in general.
Well,
I think it's
I mean,
fascinating.
she takes him in when he's technically on the run for her husband's murder.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, so it's clearly a very complicated relationship that they
Well, yeah,
have.
but she's also on the run technically, theoretically, because she covered up for it. So
She covered up for it, and yeah, the whole hero team got disbanded, and yeah, so but still, like, she chooses to let him stay, like,
Right.
even though it's like, you know, she can just be like, dude, you're on your own, kick rocks, you're on your own. She does finally like make him go home because he needs to, but it's a very interesting dynamic, and yeah, they play up some of the 90s over the top stuff, and like just like with her costume, and just with their relationship in general, about like with him sitting outside the tent, you know, like shaders outside the tent, and you see their silhouettes in the tent, and it's just like, okay. I mean,
but I love that they did that in like one of those like throwback to a Savage World, like issues, like how often that like, oh, we get a time-space continuum lapse and we're now in like Jurassic times, and like, and it's, I love that they did that. And that's then when they chose, because like, what was it Tom King's Batman where they like Wonder Woman and him go like are often like multiple years or something, and like
they think they're there for like, they feel like they're there for like 1,000 years or something,
right? But that's exactly what I was thinking of when I was reading that, of like that type of trope, and I was like, so good.
Yeah, in our world they're gone for like a day, but to them they're there for like 100 years or something,
right?
Yeah. All right. What do we think of, like, we're just kind of running through this. What do we think about his family, both his parents, I'm curious of, and then, but also Pepper. What do we think about Pepper? Like, we got to get to Pepper. John is excited. Let's talk about Pepper, John. His like ancient dog that just keeps on living no matter what happens.
And swallows toxic life forces and universes. And this dog is it. Just when you thought this book didn't have anything missing, then Pepper comes in and like swallows a demon, and you're like, oh crap, that dog is awesome. And there's something so fun about Pepper all the way through, not being like the vital plot device or anything, but just being like this funky little side piece that he's always carrying around or finding someone to watch. I love Pepper, and the parents obviously serve a very important function for Jack, in that there's a place for him to land, but then they're constantly reminding him of how the town views him, and he's unable to hear what they're trying to say, and they are unable to hear what he's trying to say. Neither one of them can notice what the other one needs. Neither one of them is wrong. They just can't communicate, like, at all. It's a very realistic experience to kind of see that, right? There's this massive disconnect where they are asking for things from him and he is asking for the things from them, and neither one hears the other person. There is that moment when he finally figures out Mother's Day, and that's a sweet little moment. But most of it is just really bad miscommunication that I think is very relatable.
Greg, what about you? What do you think of Pepper and the parents here as you go through this?
And listen, I'm not the biggest pet person, but Pepper's great. And what I love about what they do with Pepper is, like, if you've ever been reading a comic book and you're always like, whatever happened to that character? That's Pepper in this volume. Like, in this whole series, you're like, it's a character that you forget about that you love. And I think they even reference it kind of throughout the time of like, wait, where's Pepper? And you're like, oh yeah, there's a dog. Like, there's Pepper the dog. And like all of these, like, the whole issue will take place, and they're like, wait, what about Pepper? And you're like, oh, we gotta. And like those, like you mentioned them swallowing, a demon entity, and then like accidentally getting kicked into a reactor, basically, that made Pepper invincible. And it was just like, there was just silly things that like Pepper didn't, like, what Pepper did, like, it wasn't like needed to happen in the book, but it just brought some fun levity to it for the most part. Obviously, like, sucking the demon entity really was a crucial part of the book, obviously, but And then like I think like the whole relationship with his parents, like what John hit on, you know, they can't ever see eye to eye. They're always like, this is the way I view things, and you just can't see my viewpoint. And it's the same for both characters. And I do find like there was a moment where I was like, it felt real, like touching of like when, what is it? Inga was like, oh, I'm going to connect with, you know, my ex-husband or my ex-boyfriend's father because like it's clinging on to something like that I lost. Yeah. And like the father's clinging on to like, he might not have issues with his son and doesn't respect what he is doing and things, but like, he knows that Inga was a crucial part. And so if he can't have his son in his life, he's going to have Inga in his life. And I was like, that was one of those moments for me, like not as much Inga because of how much she's like, we find out she's a horrible person, but like for the father to be like, he really did care about Jack. And like, we never had a really like a moment of resolution of like where they got to have that moment. And I think though, like that flashback hits stronger of like, he wanted to have a relationship with Jack. And when he couldn't, he went to the next closest thing of someone who Jack loved. And so like that made his life better of having like bringing produce to her bakery and having those moments. So again, like just layers on this book of these characters that like that it's not a clean cut story where everyone's happy at the end and everyone rides off into the sunset, but like there's these emotional beats that really hit, which is like, and like that was one for me. I'm like, man, the dad does really care. He just doesn't know how to express it.
Yeah.
And I think it recontextualizes their relationship, or reframes it in a way where you're able to then feel like there's more to this than just the dad and son can't communicate trope, right?
Well, and I think it's not just that. Like for me, it wasn't. They can't communicate, and they can't get past their own expectations for each other. Mm-hmm. Like, and you know, Jack is not what they think he should be. They don't think he's using this stuff, and they can't get past to see what he is and what he's trying to do. And Jack can't like he can't. He's like, he feels that weight, and he just can't get past it with them. He doesn't know how to like interact with them and like have that conversation and try to move things forward. The forgive and forget, and yeah, so it's a very not unusual, but like tragic, the fact that they just cannot get, you can tell they all care about each other, but they can't find the common ground to communicate as they go through this. As for Pepper is a delight because like I said, she does several things that actually like save Jack's butt at a couple of different occasions, but there's like no real explanation about like why she's so old but doesn't seem to like get sick or get any older. And she's, you know, there's never an explanation of like why Pepper's the way she is. She just is and does things that like, and then she does these magic things and it's like, oh, well, that's not even really that important to the story, but it's just showing that Pepper's like amazing in a bunch of ways. So I love Pepper, more Pepper. Okay. I think we've covered most of the characters I really wanted to talk about. Not all, but most. So we get this, and basically Jack returning home brings a whole bunch of stuff to like, causes a whole bunch of trouble in his town. And basically he gets on the path. Mr. can always see the target, always hit the target, gets on the path of like what's really going on and what Inga is doing and what Camo Crusader is doing, and ultimately leads to a showdown where Camo Crusader dies. But like as he's trying to figure out what's actually going on and who the real villain is, he gets drugged by some hippies. Like,
I was waiting for the donut pig talk. So
you know, and he's like, he says something in his word bubbles, and he's like holding his word bubbles, and he's looking at them, and he goes on a trip that ultimately his mind for the rest of the book is like, oh, I finally realized what my powers can really do. Like, after all this time, he actually realizes that there's more to his powers than he can throw stuff and hit things, that he can actually like see where like the target and see where things should hit. What do you think about how they like his acid trip, for lack of a better term. I'm not sure exactly what he's tripping on there, but John, I think it's your turn to go first here. What did you think?
I mean, it's so perfectly Jack. Like it's like it's dramatically inappropriate. Like the whole donut sequence is hilarious, right? But it's also so phenomenal the way this is ultimately like the door opening that across the whole book. It's almost like Jack never knew what his powers were.
Yeah.
And the whole series is Jack realizing like, oh, I've just been throwing a frisbee when my powers are far more like cosmic and almost like psychic in level, right? Like what I did was just use my powers to throw a frisbee when I had so much more inside of me, like so much more I could do. And he needs a big mental shift, and this obviously allows him to do that. But in so doing, you get this incredibly meta. He's interacting with the gutters and the word balloons, and he's just tripping balls, right? He is just absolutely tripping balls, and it's hilarious. And I mean, at least the first time I read it, I knew they were drugging him. You could tell. I was like, why are you drinking, Jack? Why are you drinking that? Right?
He's Jack, and he's not.
But it is so phenomenal. He had just had a near-death experience, nearly drowning, and now he's like in a hippie commune, and they're drugging him, and he's just like he's along for the ride. I think partly because his power is, it feels almost psychic in nature, in that he is able to like, if he's attuned to himself and the universe, he's able to find what he's looking for, right? He's able to do the thing he needs to do, whether it's verbalize something to convince somebody of something, to seek something out that he's looking for, or to throw something and hit the target exactly the way it needs to be hit, right? And this is the beginning of the journey that leads to that final page where he's like, I finally figured out what I'm supposed to do. And I think it's a very interesting way to tell a superhero comic, right? The journey is self-discovery.
Yeah. Greg, what about you? What do you think of this sequence?
Yeah. Well, since I'm on JP's channel, I'm going to show the donut panel here. So
and Greg goes backstage. You can show it.
Well, what I love is, again, like it's not trying to be like that. It actually is like this, like, spiritual moment. The dude is literally like, oh yeah, like, oh, I drugged him, and they're like, and the guy's like, I didn't realize that's what all your tattoos means. He's like, oh, absolutely not what it means at all. Like, no, like it just is a big like phony scheme. And because I respect your channel, I'm not going to say what it actually means. But like those moments and like the whole breaking the fourth wall with the panels and the trip, like it's a great way to do it in the midst of a comic book. Like it can come off as as a gimmick of like, oh, we're gonna run into the border and the gutters and pull the word balloons down, but because of the context of what it did, it really worked. And like in the issue he gets drugged, the very next issue it starts with him like passed out on the front yard or something of his house, and his dad comes out and is talking with him, and like he's having this heart-to-heart moment with his dad trying to break through, and his dad even says something like what's that on your face, like why are your eyes wet, like what's with your eyes, like why, like, and this whole like, even though Jack told him everything of like trying to build the bridge, his dad's like, you don't mean that because you're on drugs. Like it lost its value. Like there's no truth. And it was such one of those moments. I thought, again, like, I feel like sometimes when you're having a comic book run, there's always like just one of those like weird issues that just pops in. And this was it, but it worked very well for the story that they were trying to tell. And then it allowed the plot device too to shift his mindset of that it couldn't be Inga who was the bad person. It had to have been the sheriff who sent him into this drug, hippie commune. Yeah. And like, it allowed him to then have distrust for the sheriff then too, because they distrust him. And then it allowed, like, so it just was a great use of building off the story, but world there, and like I love those characters. Like, very much Big Lebowski vibes of the dude in the hut. And then I loved his moment, at the end of this of volume 3. So like that was great too. So
okay. Yeah, like I think it serves such a great purpose in the story, because it's like it takes him like being drugged out of his mind to realize, wait, I can do more than just throw things. And it's like all these years and he's never been able to like look beyond the obvious, which I think is Jack to a T. Is he can't look beyond he has trouble looking beyond the surface, but his whole ability is he can look beyond the surface and see what needs to happen. And yet he's never been able to do it until he like goes on this little journey. And I do love the fact that like he's like having a real conversation with his dad. He's like, wait, are you on dope? And he's like, wait, am I on dope? Like,
is that why I know everything?
But so yeah, I think it's a great little addition, and it changes his mindset through the rest of the book. It allows him to see eventually to see what actually is going on in the town, which leads to the confrontation with Inga, which leads to...
Well, I was going to say, I love the bit late in the book where he tells Inga, or he's talking, he's like, yeah, my powers actually, I can convince people to do stuff by having cards. And she's like, did you talk me into sleeping with you? Is that what, like, you can see her wheels going like, oh my God, you used that on me, didn't you? Like, you used this on me. Like, there's a wonderful moment of realization for her. They never even have a chance to get into the conversation because he's rushing off to do the next thing. But
which is funny because that's so much what she was using.
Yeah, she's totally been abusing like him in a different way. But when she realizes that he's like used that power on her, it's so great.
John, do me a favor, show that panel of the donut picture for us, please, so we can.
Oh yeah, I got you.
Yeah, that's really good, John. Okay, yeah,
and that was it. Yeah, there you go.
So, all right, we're getting through most of the stuff I have here. We do get like after that. I think there's one more character that kind of comes into the book late that I do want to discuss a little bit, which is Rudy. Like just this random becomes a sidekick as we go through here. What did you think of like? And then he manages to, as we go through this and we get through the events of the book, he manages to stay out of prison, yet she ends up having to go to prison, because she accidentally killed someone, whereas he like killed someone on purpose. But so what do you think of his sidekick that Inga gives powers to that he accumulates? It's just this random person that worked in the cafe. What do you think of that character and the way they fit in at the end, Greg?
I mean, well, she killed a former vice president. So
well,
just because he can't spell potato, I don't think it's worthy of that. But yeah, I get it.
I thought it was a fun of, I've said it all the time, like using the tropes, but like the whole like, is this a team up? Are we teaming up? Like, yeah, it's a team up. And then like her character arc, even mostly is in that third volume, right? Of like where it's like.
She really doesn't appear till the third volume, really. But
yeah, because I think she's kind of glimmers as a background character that then gets utilized. Yeah. But she pushes him to to really think about who he is and like what he stands for as well. And I think that's what we see of he never, like we talked about, like it took him to be on drugs to realize his full potential. Well, he never had really anybody in the book that was like pushing him to recognize his full potential, right? Like everyone was manipulating him for their own devices, I think, for the most part. Like, whether, it was the Camo Crusader or Neon and, even Inga with what she was doing. You can say the sheriff with what his motives were, of trying to just use him to better his investigation. His parents didn't really get him. It took this kind of young teen kind of like doesn't take any guff from an old dude. It was like the kind of like shows him like, hey, this is what you can be. Like, if you don't do this right now, you're doing the exact same thing that we've tried to prevent the whole story. Like, So I think like you had the drugs that kind of enlightened him, but he still didn't fully realize it till he had somebody come alongside of him and say like, hey, here is your, like, this is what you need to be doing. Like, this is the right. And like for him to say, oh yeah, like that makes sense. So I thought like her role was very important for him to kind of understand who he was as a character and kind of who he was supposed to be moving forward. I'll cede my time, but I will say this. I do have one character that we still have to talk about, but go ahead, John.
Okay. No,
I was gonna say.
So what did you think about this with Ruby as you go here, John?
I mean, she's definitely an opportunity for him to learn what he could be doing and how maybe he could be of service and what he may have wished someone had been for him in that scenario, right? And I will say I wish she'd had a little more time. I don't know that she gets as fleshed out as some others, but let's talk about the Uber driver. That's the guy.
I love
that. Yes. Okay.
He is easily the best side character in the entire series, y'all. And I don't even know that I remember his name. Does he get a name?
I don't know.
I don't think they ever. I just flipped through as many pages with him as possible, and I don't ever see him get a name.
I don't think so.
I love their conversations. I love the moments when it's just like, hey, you asked for conversation, you want to have a conversation, or he's just like sitting quietly. Jack will be like, oh, can I borrow your shoes? He's like, yeah, you can borrow those boots. Just make sure you bring them back. Don't wreck them. There's so many. He's like, at the end, he's like, oh, I don't have any weapons to fight these guys. He's like, brother,
we're in Wisconsin.
We're in Wisconsin. We all got guns, And then he ends up saving Jack's life at the end. Like, there's so many things I love about
when the first interaction. I knew I was like, they better like you. Yeah. Like, I hope we get to be with this character more. Like, he like hitchhikes and he's like, I'm not picking you. F you, Cross Jack. And then
every single time drops that F-bomb on him every time.
And Cross Jack's like, fine, I'll just order an Uber driver. And the guy who like, you see the brakes slam on. He's like, did you just order that Uber? Like, it's me. I'm
the only one in town.
He's like, and like to see that progression of and like at the funeral, I think it was at his dad's funeral. So that's like the third volume. It might have been earlier. But he's like, hey, he's like, F you. He's like, I like you, but I gotta appear like people know me. Like I gotta like. He's like,
I gotta maintain.
I gotta maintain a look, but like screw you. But it also kind of like he's like, hey, like you're my bro. Like hey, like I feel for you. I was like, it's man, I love that dynamic. And I'm so glad, John, that you were like when I said we had one more character.
You said one more character. I was like, oh, I got this. I know this character. Go.
No, their interactions are easily the funniest and most fun. And there's an arc to like he gets an arc, like their relationship gets an arc in this, even though it's all jokes and one-liners and
I mean, getting paid $16,000 for an Uber ride probably helps too when they did the vote issue. So that doesn't hurt a relationship. But
they paid they have the $16,000 Uber drive. That does kind of change. He's like, I got a new truck, thanks to you.
Black Beauty.
Black Beauty. That's right.
So good, man. Yeah. And then there's several times when it's just it cuts to the two of them driving somewhere, and it's just like Jack vomiting drama from his life. He's just like, it's like a psychotherapist moment where he's just like, let me just unload to this driver my whole life experience. I'm just doubting myself and I'm doing I'm just going down there. There's so much like word vomit from him that I just absolutely love. And the Uber driver the whole time is like, hey, extra charge for the dog.
Well, and even in that point, one of those points where the Uber driver was like, he's like, oh, I see you clicked on, you want to have conversation. Like, and that is like, and he knows it'll mess up his rating. Like, it doesn't get, if he doesn't like indulge in the
I got to do it. Yeah.
And so like, he has to be, and it's because it's a truck. They're up front, right? Like, it's not just like,
there's no back
it's side by side. It's so like, just like, he's like, all right, let's talk. You want it? I have to, because you clicked it on the app. Let's do it.
It's so glorious.
Yeah, no, For sure. Okay. Anything else before we talk about the finale here of how this wraps up in this particular issue?
No, I'm ready.
You guys got anything else you want to touch on?
No, I will just say before we wrap up, because it kind of the annuals, if you will, were fantastic. Like the gold issue, like a lot of those things that like people throw away of like I don't have to read, and you don't theoretically, but the Bad Girl issue and the gold issue, I thought like allowing us to have a multiverse kind of moment in it, that like you can set that aside and it doesn't detract from the story that you're gonna get. It's like it wasn't thrown in like. And those are those annuals that I appreciate and love is when it adds value to the story, but you don't have to read it necessarily to enjoy the story. I thought like that was a real well done thing. And John, you had already mentioned the Bad Girl part of like where all the villain basically makes all the guys disappear, and it was like, oh, everything's great with the world.
Yeah.
Well, and you get a side of Neon, right, where she is like finding her joy, and then to have that snatched away from her. It's an interesting moment that I think gives her character dimensions that we would not have gotten otherwise. But again, to your point, not vital, not necessary,
right?
But enriching, right?
But I feel like so often and I probably wasn't annual, but I say an annual, like that's what it felt like, those moments. Like they often feel like when you're watching your favorite sitcom and it's like, oh, this is the big episode, and it just is rehashes of the same of clips that you've already watched, and you're like, oh, you're giving me 2 minutes of story. Like there's actually value to it if you wanted to and get to live with it. So I thought it was really well done.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that, because you talk about Bad Girls makes Neon an actual character that she's not really before that. And then Gold is like, there's crazy stuff happening, but it's really about Jack getting the opportunity to talk to his younger self. And and he's realizing just like the only thing that he really changes about his younger self is he does like actually acknowledge his mother on Mother's Day, but like he just like can't deal with how selfish he was, even though he's still super selfish now. It's like, and he still can't stand like, how can you be so selfish?
Yeah. But I think it also highlights, I think, a theme that is becoming, I think, slightly more common now, which is that there's no finish line, that these things don't have an end, right? Yeah. And that therapy, that personal growth, all these things don't have an end. It's a cycle. It's a circle. And what he's acknowledging in that story is, look how far I've come. Do I have a lot more ways to go? Do I hate that person that I was? Am I unwilling to acknowledge the value that he had? Sure. But look how far I've come, right? Yeah, there is no end. There is no finish line for my personal growth, right? But I've come a long ways and I'm going in the right direction. And ultimately, that's that moment when his mom says, oh, it's fine, sweetie. You always take me to church on my birthday, on Mother's Day. And I'm like, and you're like, oh, I did figure something out. I did make something better. I did improve something.
Yeah. I mean, even
she's got the flowers, I think, right next to her.
Yeah.
And
yeah. And he even says, he's like, he gets off the phone with her. He's like, huh, he got it right. Holy shit. Like, and even though he's talking about himself, he's like, I did it. Like, I got it. I learned, I got better. Like, he's like even impressed with it, that like, he's a little bit taken aback that he actually grew and like with a little bit with the opportunity. And so, yeah, I think those are definitely excellent issues. So we go to the last issue.
And I know, JP, I thought, you had asked me when you bought this, he's like, why does it go 1 to 13 and then 25? Like, what is happening in this book? And I was like, don't worry. They'll you'll get it when you read it.
Sort of.
But I love it. I mean,
the trope. It's just a time jump. It's
just a time jump. And they basically acknowledge that there were 12 issues in between that were never published. But instead, we're going to jump to issue 25. Yeah. And so anybody buying this book, I want them to think like, don't worry about like, wait, what's with the continuity? Why am I getting 1 through 13 Gold, Bad Girls, and 25? Like where's the rest of the story? Like it's an intentional move that feels very Robert Kirkman-esque in the sense that it's like, I'm just going to throw caution to the wind and number this the way I want to number it because we're jumping.
Yeah. And so we jump ahead a year after all the stuff with Inga is kind of taken care of. We jump ahead a year, and we see like he goes and gets Rudy after she gets out of jail and takes her to where his mom is actually helping to train these new people with powers, these superheroes in town. But we see that he's kind of still a little lost as we get him here. And Neon comes back and offers him his old job back. The team is back together. And we get to see him go back and try to be that person. And we see that he's not that person anymore. And that ultimately we get to the end and we see that he's given up the superhero life and become a teacher. So what, teaching art basically. But so what do you think of his journey in this last issue? Like the wrap up here we get of his final journey. Like after all this, he tries to go back to what he once was, realizes that's not who he is anymore. I mean, he even has on the thing, like, who am I? Like we see after she offers him the job and he writes it on the page. Greg, what did you think about this?
So don't quote me on this. And that's what I was looking to try and see here. I think originally what they were going to wrap up, or they issue 13 concluded, right? It had a very satisfying ending. Mm-hmm. I think they were anticipating that they were going to tell more stories, and then things happened that it was they're not. So I think they then with Being Image are we're going to do one more issue to do this, kind of close it out the way we want to, because we're not going to be able to tell arcs, and also be very tongue-in-cheek of do it that way of we're not doing issue 14, we're doing issue 25. And I love that if you catalog yours in CLZ, it says issue 13, issue 25. And it doesn't say it, and so it really looks like if you're a collector, completionist, yeah, you really get cringes. Going back into the I even think I messaged you guys when I'm what are we reading? And you're oh, these, and I'm I look at my CLZ, I'm do I have everything? I'm I got 1 through 13, 25, gold, bad girls. I'm am I missing? I was what? I was oh yeah, they did that. So I liked it because I think what was important was we got to close up the with issue 13 of the main story arc of all the the Faceless Horde or whatever and stuff,
and Inga and all of that.
Yeah. And so we had closure to that. And I mentioned it earlier, but I do love, before I get to 25, that splash page where they have all the characters that we met that then got to use some of the hero powers. And so they Inga kind of is a Spawn character. The priest is a cyber character.
Yeah.
I don't even know what freaking Big Lebowski is, but
our drug addict.
Yeah. I love that all these characters that were kind of minor characters throughout the book come into play at the end and have that super ability, that power. So to get to then 25, I really that's where we start to see the growth of that we've hinted at already. Of who he is, what happens of hey, this is who there's that redemptive arc for Crosscheck in the midst of this. I also and correct me if I'm wrong, he has a cyber arm now, and that's never addressed. And that had to happen sometime between 14 and 24. And I love that they put that in there as kind of an homage, because they even say at some point oh, everyone has to be cyberized at some point, it's a 90s. Yeah. And they still do that with him, and they don't tell you why. They just you're just gonna live with it. But you get to see you really get to see the conclusion, the closure of his growth as a character that we talked about with him and Ruby, when he goes back to the jail, and then they put all these these young MTV / kind of superheroes into jail, and she's
I love how you think young people now is MTV when MTV is not a thing anymore.
I know
that's the thing when we were young, Greg. That's the 90s.
Yeah, thing. But that's what it was that kind of they kind of reference that it was
young heroes of 2020 are not MTV.
Yeah, but that's the tongue in cheek of it. They know that, and it's hilarious. It doesn't even exist anymore. And I think it's a good. I think issue 13 is a good closure to the story that was being told. I think issue 25 is a great closure to Crossjack and who he is as a character and growth. And I think that if you left it at issue 13, you'd be fine. But the issue 25, you really get to see him come full circle as a character, and I appreciate that. And then if you flip over issue 25 on the other side, it's a swimsuit issue that you had to throw in. Like, come on, it's so good.
Yes, we get the swimsuit. Yeah, the little 90s swimsuit edition of they're playing volleyball, and yeah.
And the fact that then Tim and Tony did then after this issue, Marvel's swimsuit issues that like they brought back in is just pure gold. Like somebody was a local man fan and was like, "Hey, do you guys want to do a swimsuit issue for Marvel?" And they're like, "Yeah, let's do it." It's so good.
What about you, John? What do you think of here the finale of how they wrap up?
I feel like it's wonderful and important for him to be able to get the opportunity to return to that life and then choose not to pursue it. That's an important moment for him to recognize when he's strayed off of the path and acknowledge it when it confronts him, and that it confronts him in the form of Ruby, right? She basically comes to him and says, you know, this is wrong. You know, I had respect for you and you've blown it. And then he's like, all right, team up time. Let's go fix this mistake. And it's a wonderful like bit, a wonderful sequence. And he is like, he gets to be the team leader that he never really was for the other guys. Right. And he's like, your power against this, and you go there and it's like, he's now not shooting arrows or bullets. He's shooting people. He's targeting people. Right. And they're hitting their marks because of his instruction. It's wonderful. And it all works for me.
Yeah. No, I agree with everything you guys said. I think it's really well done. I think having the skip and then coming back and you wrap up the Inga story with 13 and what's like kind of the thing that's been going on through those 13 issues. And then you come back and you're like, okay, we jump ahead, and he's still like a year or so later, he's still like trying to figure it out, but he's getting closer, and it takes him confronting that old life that got taken from him.
Yeah.
And getting the opportunity to have it back and realize, no, this isn't what I want anymore. And this is not who I am anymore. I mean, because he has, even when Neon comes to like recruit him, he like, you see the list of the like on his drawing paper, it says, who am I supposed to be? Like he's even written that whole message, like, who am I supposed to be? And he realizes by confronting that old life that like, no, that's not who I am anymore. I can be more, I can be like, there's different things for me that are better for me. And so I think it's an excellent little wrap up. And then of course you got the swimsuit issue. And even on that, it's like, wait, we're done already? Like, you know, they even have a little tongue in cheek at the end. We were just getting started. And so we even get that at the end. So I think they do an excellent job. So final thoughts on this series. John, you want to go first here? Like, what are your final thoughts here?
I think I use this word to describe this comic a ton, and it's just it is fun. Like, this is a fun, lively, energetic comic book. You read it and you are absorbed in it, the atmosphere of it and the characters and the themes. It's all very much engrossing and entertaining, and it's a whole lot of fun. I feel like I've now read it, I think 3 times, and I every time I come back enthusiastic. It reads too quickly, so for this show I had to like really pace myself so that I wasn't just blasting through it. And in fact, I read the issue 25 before we went live tonight, just to be able to have it like, you know, fresh in mind. But if I was gonna sum it up for anybody, it would be fun and fuck Crossjack.
Greg, what about you? Final thoughts on this one?
Oh, I thought it was great, and I thought it was a great testament of you got 2 talented comic book creators who have a love for a genre in the 90s, but also like, again, I didn't read the Max, I didn't read Spawn, I didn't read a lot of these young buds and these things that are, and it didn't take away from my enjoyment of the comic at all. So I can only imagine if I was a fan of those comics, how much more I would love this. Even like, so that like, to me, like that's a testament to like, it's just a really good story. And I think like they were able to rein each other in it in whatever way they had to, of like, hey, yes, we want to do this, and we want to give those Easter eggs for people who love the 90s. And like there's a scene in the jail or one of the jails or something where you just see like all these different hands at some point, and like you can go through them like, oh, that's the Max, that's Spawn, like, and like you're trying to figure out who's but I think what they do is it's so well crafted that like you can enjoy those Easter eggs if you're a fan, but it doesn't take away from the story. Because it's a fun story. I think the more you are involved in comics, the more you're going to enjoy it. If you love the structure and the tropes of comics, you're going to enjoy this. If you love 90s Image comics, you're going to love this even more. And so like it's like, but if none of those happen and this is your first time, you're like, it's a lot of fun, like John said. And I think it's their character, you know, Crossjack is a character that like you root for, and it doesn't necessarily like he doesn't get the girl at the end, he doesn't get the like it's you know, it's about him as a character, and I think that's where it shines. Like I think Crossjack is like everyone's like screw you the entire time, and then he kind of was just like, hey, I found out who I need to be, and it was great. I think it was a great wrap up for if you're going to have to tell a story in whatever amount of time you have. I think they nailed it.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you guys said. I think it's would I rank it as one of my all-time favorites? Probably not. But would I reread this? Absolutely. Like, you know, it's a really good time. It doesn't take itself too seriously, but yet it does a good job of. It doesn't take itself too seriously, but it takes his journey seriously. Ultimately, like in terms of the journey he takes through the course of this, and I think that's what allows it to work, because there are kind of the two levels of how it like looks at itself and. Yeah, I think it works on all the levels. It's a ton, and like I said, it's a ton of fun. There's a lot of nostalgia here, and yet there's some, you know, there's some meaning to his journey as he goes through and realizes, you know, slowly but surely realizes his failings and tries to become better, and doesn't, like John said earlier, the journey never ends. The journey's not over for him when he gets to the end, but he's definitely found a better place than where he was when it starts. And so yeah, I would definitely recommend it. I think it's a good time. I think it's worth your time if you're like a big comic fan, even if the 90s don't necessarily mean anything to you other than it was, you know, like, you know, the exaggeration of the 90s, not necessarily you don't need to know all of that to make this work and to enjoy it. So with that, Greg, you got anything you coming up? Any interviews getting ready to come out? Anything that we should know about on the Bearded Comic Bros channel?
Yes. I was trying to find something while you were talking, because I completely forgot about this.
Do I need to go to John first?
Go to John first. Yeah.
Okay, John, do you have anything coming up on your channel that you want to discuss?
Yeah, I had a bunch of live streams the last week. So if people are looking for comic book talk, TV talk, The Pit is amazing, and I'm geeking out on it on most of my live streams. I've got an unboxing video tomorrow dropping, so you can check that out. Omni X-Men is on my channel next Tuesday. We're talking issue 205, some Barry Windsor Smith, you know, artwork, some great classic 80s kind of stuff. So those are the things I got coming up. I think I'm off most of this weekend though. I got a parade at my school Saturday morning, and then I've got a family birthday party Sunday night, so I'm off most of the weekend.
Okay. Greg, did you find what you were looking for?
And I'm showing a page, and trust me, JP, it's not the donut page. So this last page, I love that they did an homage that right there, just like the pure 90s right there. They did that, and I was like, that's gold.
I talked about it, and then I forgot to go back to it. So yes, yeah. No, I'm glad you showed that.
So it's perfect. Interviews. Oh man, I've done like 6 in the past couple of days. I have a Kickstarter one. I think coming out Monday. I just had Fred Van Lente, who did Cowboys and Aliens, which got turned into that wonderful movie.
Really poor Harrison Ford film.
But he's doing some stuff with Oz. Elliot Kalin, who's Harley Quinn, did Maniac in New York, has a Barbarian Behind Bars. He was a writer for The Daily Show for like 12 seasons. Really hilarious guy.
That's cool.
So those interviews are up right now. Dennis Hopeless I just interviewed him. did a lot of stuff for Marvel. He had the Spider-Woman story arc where she was pregnant and dealing with that. Like that was his kind of big thing. But he has a book from Ignition Press called Just Brutal about like family dynamics of families dealing with like this curse that they're like their parents are superheroes that have been defending the world from stuff forever, and how that family dynamic. It's great. If you aren't checking out Ignition Press, that's one. So that's coming up. There's a couple that I haven't recorded but are going to be a lot of fun. So yeah, just every Monday new interviews drop. So
okay. For me, I got a pre-record coming tomorrow where I look at like some of my current favorite interior artists. I just pick a few of like some books that I've been reading and like just highlighting, because I feel like we talk a lot about covers and everything else, and just talking about a little bit about some interior artists. So I got that video dropping tomorrow. Tomorrow night also, Kavi and I are doing a Gotham City Chronicles. We're talking about Catwoman When in Rome, which is kind of the spinoff from the Long Halloween stuff. Neither of us had read it before, so we're looking forward to talking about that. My usual weekend stuff, and then next week I'll be back with another indie show. I got Circumstances, I got Daymares, and I got Beckerman are joining me, and we're going to talk grommets.
such a good one.
So we're talking grommets. I have yet to read this yet. I've saved it to this weekend. I'm going to dig in over the weekend and read that. So
I'm trying to go up to a con where Brian Posehn is going to be at this weekend. So
nice. So that's what I got coming up. Thanks to Tony for hanging out with us tonight. Appreciate you, sir. Gordon also. So yeah, with that, we're gonna thank you guys for watching, and we're gonna get out of here later.